everywhere else, it's neighboring Jackson, gets a new business. But you could drive miles and miles down Jackson streets and find, hey, we got this dying community over here where you could have put a business right here.
I work in the restaurant industry when I'm not in school, so seeing those prices having a hike really affects how people spend their money.
Everything costs too much, but we do have to eat.
Hello and welcome to a special edition of Mississippi Insight. I'm Byron Brown. Thank you for joining us this evening as we turn our focus to Mississippi's economy. Tonight we'll hear from Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann, MDOT Commissioner Willie Simmons, and Scott Waller of the Mississippi Economic Council about the state of our economy, where we're going, and how we might get there, from productivity to worker well-being and the critical factors that impact them all. We have a lot to cover now on this special edition of Mississippi Insight. There is no bigger voice in the public sector on our economic policy than the Mississippi Legislature. That body begins its 2023 session in less than 4 months. And the Joint Legislative Budget Committee met earlier in September to hear from state economist Corey Miller. The gist of that briefing: Mississippi's economy is recovering from the downturn of the COVID-19 pandemic, thanks in great part to federal financial relief, but our economic performance still lags behind other states. We remain the poorest state in the union, with about 1 in 5 of our people living in below the poverty line. And leaders have lingering questions about our sky-high inflation rates and the potential for another economic recession. I spoke with Lieutenant Governor Delbert Hosemann this week, and he offered his thoughts on the state economist's update to lawmakers.
Well, I appreciate his advice, of course. We've received contrary advice from just about every other publication that I've looked at that says that inflation will be significantly higher than 2.5%. So right now, the numbers that we're looking at are probably in the 7 or 8%. The really only question I think really is out there is what's the duration? You know, how long will this go on? You've seen just a real significant decline in the stock market in the last week. That usually is a precursor of what's going to happen 6 months from now. They're trying to figure out what the economy is going to do, and those are people betting money that we're going to have a significant recession. And we see it, we see it in talking to people in the grocery stores and at the gas stations, just like everybody else does, and the cost and having to make an economic decision about whether to make travel or whether to do this or not, based upon the fact that their dollars that they're earning now are worth less when they go to the grocery store. And that's the basic concept.
When we talk about a possible recession, what do you think the impact is going to be on the state of Mississippi?
It really varies. The impact is on the citizens, not much so with the state. Our revenue as such will probably decrease somewhat, could decrease somewhat, but we specifically held back about $300 million of ARPA money, and we cut our budget 2 years ago, and now we have over $1 billion in cash in our treasury. So we have enough money to have the state run well over the next couple of years if this occurs. And so we have really, with forethought, looked at balancing our budget over a period of years and having these expenses go out for ARPA and American Rescue Plan, which is basically infrastructure projects, having those projects go out over a period of years. So I've always got my people working, and consequently they would have less of a result from an inflationary environment.
When we look at unemployment at 3.6%, so seasonally adjusted, but our labor participation rate remains at the lowest in the nationwide. It's 55.3%, and we still have about 11,000 fewer people working now than we did in February 2020 before COVID pandemic. What do we need to do as a state to boost not only the labor participation but also the number of good paying jobs that our workers would be willing to take?
I wish I had an answer for all of that. It is very disturbing that we have as low a labor participation rate as we have here in Mississippi. So why do we have that? And you have to me, you start with the beginning. In the beginning, we need to have our people educated. Our 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds up to 18, 22, whatever education forum that they want, we've got to have an educated workforce. Without that, they become non-competitive. So they can't get the latest skill that it would take to be a welder or to be whatever you wanted to do in your economic life. So I believe it starts with education, and that our people have to be competitive. And we're not just competitive against Alabama, we're competitive against Korea and China and all over. So our people have got to be ready to go to work. The second part is this inflationary spiral, which is occurring, has pretty much done away with worrying about a $7 or $8 an hour job. Those aren't out there anymore. People are paying $15, $20, $25, $30 an hour now for jobs that were probably half that just 6 months or a year ago. So you talk to any employer in Mississippi, they'll say we'll pay X, which is always almost double what they were paying a year ago to people who come in. So that the actual economics of going to work have improved for people who want to work. So now we have to make sure our people are educated well, which comes some through the community colleges, some through work training programs, but really starts when you're in pre-K, K, and all the way up to high school, junior college, and university level. All of those need to be emphasized. All of that education has to work, or nothing works. So I'm hopeful it will continue. We started a new program, Accelerate, and that's been very successful, and we're going on further to get people educated enough to get high-paying jobs.
When we talk about the Jackson water crisis, and it's been not only nationwide, but pretty much all over the world with the issues that we have in Jackson, what impact does that have in recruiting business in the economy of the state of Mississippi? Does it, people say, hey, we want to invest in the state, or does it have a negative impact to say, hey, they can't get their act together? Why should we even do business with the state or the city of Jackson?
Unfortunately, I think your latter is more accurate. We were on the front page of the USA Today. I saved the newspaper. We were the lead story for 2 or 3 days on every national news network, with a negative view towards Jackson. And I would receive, and I talked to so many people that received emails. So Mississippi is out of water. Mississippi, not Jackson. Mississippi is out of water. And so I think the negative impact we may not be able to quantify for a number of years. So we took a step backwards by having this system collapse like it did, and the weeks and weeks and weeks, and while the governor took over the system to have it work back again, who I think has done a great job, by the way. So I don't know that we'll really be able to quantify how great the magnitude of loss, not only in an economic, but in a perception way. This just reinforces the old perceptions that we're backwards some kind of way. Look, we can't even provide water to our citizens. So I just thought it was horrible what has happened to that. The cure for it, of course, is to get the thing right and not have this happen again and show people that we're open for business. I'm hoping this legislative session will be able to do some additional advertising to show Mississippi is open for business. We're redoing our state parks. We're doing a lot of things that will have positive impacts, but we've got to turn the paradigm. It's hard. People had a preconceived notion and we confirmed it. And now we've got to get back working again to make sure people realize that we test the rockets to the moon. We have the greatest agriculture. We build automobiles. We build the ships for the Navy, everything here. And that just kind of, no pun intended, went down the drain.
That's Delbert Hosemann's view, but what about the private sector? Mississippi Economic Council Scott Waller will offer his thoughts, and Transportation Commissioner Willie Simmons is here. How will Mississippi's infrastructure impact our economic competitiveness? Mississippi Insight is back in a moment. With us tonight are two key voices in any discussion about our economic future. Central Transportation Commissioner Willie Simmons joins us. He represented District 13 in the Mississippi Delta in the state Senate from 1993 to 2020. And Scott Waller is president and CEO of the Mississippi Economic Council. The group has been advocating for job creation and economic growth since 1949. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. Let's get right to the discussion. Scott Waller, you just heard the Lieutenant Governor's comments on the prospects of a recession. Is he right to be worried, and will our business community fare in such an economic downturn if that were to happen?
Well, I think when you think about it from the aspect of small businesses are impacted greatly when there's the type of inflation and the rate of inflation that we're having right now. And I think that's one of the things that we see. We're constantly hearing about that issue because it's costing more to do business. It's costing the consumer more for products, whether it's going out to dinner, whether it's going to the grocery store, whatever the case may be, it's creating that sense of, gosh, it's just taking more to just do the things that we used to do. So that in itself is going to have an impact on our economy, not here just in Mississippi, but across the nation. And it's something that we have to really be thinking about and be prepared for as we go forward.
Commissioner Simmons, your primary focus on the state's transportation network. You called it in the past for substantial upgrades to our roads, bridges, railways, et cetera. How would a recession impact your agency's ability to pursue those upgrades?
A recession could be very negative on our impact, especially if we don't invest in our infrastructure. The key to any state and or community, if you're going to build your economy, you're going to have to invest in your infrastructure. A good, well-invested infrastructure with the ability to maintain it is going to encourage industry and businesses to come into a community. Also, it help maintain those businesses. I'm very pleased the fact that tonight Scott is here because he and I have worked together in the past with the business community, and the business community has advocated for more investment in our infrastructure. We were very fortunate this year under the leadership of Lieutenant Governor and Speaker and the legislators and the governor. They gave us additional dollars along with money that came from the federal government, but those dollars are one-time money for the most part, so we need recurring money that we would certainly like to talk about as we go forward.
And Commissioner, earlier this year you took part in a Rural Infrastructure Summit. You looked at not only the transportation but also water, sewage, broadband and infrastructure. What should state lawmakers do to address these needs next session, particularly in rural and urban communities? What are you looking for to happen?
To invest in it. It's good to rely on the dollars that come from the federal government. As you well know, the federal government under President Biden and Congress send a lot of money into the state, and that's one of the things that help us to maintain the viable economy that we have in the state today. But investing in broadband, our infrastructure system, which they added additional dollars to, and over the next 5 years, we, the Department of Transportation, is going to get about $962 million. Billions of dollars are going to be spent, hopefully, in the state of Mississippi on broadband. When you combine that infrastructure system with broadband, our infrastructure, and our water and sewage that the federal government is putting in, if we, the state, step up to the plate and put dollars into it, we're going to have a well-financed institution where we can properly build capacity highways and maintain the existing highway system that we have.
And Scott, from the infrastructure, from the commercial point of view, what needs to happen and what needs to be done?
I think the biggest thing, and the commissioner touched on, is the investment that's being made into the infrastructure. And one of the things that MEC worked on, and this was when the commissioner was actually the chairman of transportation in the Senate, we were working on trying to get additional dollars into our roads and bridges primarily. And we've seen that number increase greatly. He mentioned the Infrastructure and Jobs Act dollars that are coming in the state. It was very exciting to see the legislature make a commitment of $40 million of matching funds, which is actually a 5-year commitment. That each year, if we put that $40 million into it as new money from the state, it will match money from federal government, which will mean a $1.12 billion investment of new monies into our road and bridge system. Add on top of that the dollars that have been made available for broadband expansion, the dollars that are being dedicated for actual water and sewer infrastructure. I think there's going to be money available to help us get to the point of really seeing a big difference as we go forward. So it's been a lot of work. It's been a long time coming, but we're really starting to see the benefits of it today. The biggest concern, though, is we'll go back to inflation. Mm-hmm. How much of that is going to eat into the cost of us really having, the ability to utilize these new monies in the right way? So we're hoping that doesn't hurt us too bad, and we're able to continue to really see the improvements to our road and bridges. And then the other thing that I want to compliment, particularly the Department of Transportation, has really focused, a portion of the lottery funding that we get in taxes, the first $80 million goes to Department of Transportation, and they dedicated that to addressing 2-lane highways across the state. And I think that is a big need that we're starting to see the impact of as well. So we're headed in the right direction. Things are looking well. We just got to stay on track.
And speaking of the lottery, the impact of the lottery has making a difference?
Oh, it's definitely making a difference in terms of meeting the funding for transportation. And then the additional dollars that are going into the Education Enhancement Fund has been much greater than what everybody was really expecting on the front end.
We talked earlier a bit about labor participation, just over 55% of Mississippi at last report, the nation's lowest rate. On the other hand, there are a lot of stable, good paying jobs in the state that are not being filled. Scott, what are your thoughts on our labor picture here in Mississippi
Well,
right now?
I have to agree with the Lieutenant Governor's statement that number is way too low. We've got to focus on raising our labor participation rate. But one of the things that I see happening is that we're making real progress. In 2015, MEC, along with Mississippi Economic Development Council, produced a competitiveness study looking at what we needed to do to improve workforce development in the state. And while there were pockets of really excellence happening in the workforce development arena, it was just not coordinated in a way that it needed to be. So we had pushed for the development of the Office of Workforce Development, which was put in place in the 2020 session. It's now been staffed and working, branded as Accelerate Mississippi. And we see this as really the starting point for improving workforce development, not only opportunities for our companies, but opportunities for our citizens to get the training necessary for jobs that are available, that are paying a much higher wage than what most people have thought of the wage in Mississippi has been for years. I think even the Lieutenant Governor alluded to the fact that wages are much higher as a result of all of the things that are happening. We have an opportunity to really address some of the past challenges by a coordinated, concerted effort to put workforce training opportunities out there for all of our citizens, and it will make a long-term difference.
Commissioner, the Mississippi Delta region remains one of the poorest. You live in the Delta, you've been representing the Delta in the Senate. I know that many people there want to get more prosperous jobs in the Delta, so what makes it so difficult to get those jobs there?
Part of it is the lack of investment in the past in infrastructure. And as I indicated earlier, if you build it, they'll come. That applies to business and industry. If you don't invest in your infrastructure, then you have a tendency to drive the business community as well as tourists away, because when people key in, what's the best direction to get to Cleveland, Mississippi, to the Grand Museum, or wherever it is that they're going, their traffic is going to take them to the best highway possible. So when you take that prior investment away from a community, it takes away from that. What we're focusing on as commissioners, I'm very pleased with the fact that we have 3 commissioners, 2 Republicans, I, a Democrat, but we work across party lines. We don't get into speaking and talking about what's best for investment in the way of infrastructure based upon the political party that you're a part of. We work for the state of Mississippi and the citizens to make sure that we are investing as indicated with the lottery money. We decided that we was going to spend the $80 million in paving highways that have not been paved in 20 years. So you see a lot of work going on in the Mississippi Delta. As we invest in those kinds of programs, you're going to see a better improvement. We can take any county. I'm going to use Hinds County as an example that we are here now. We have one of the most unsafest highways in the state of Mississippi, Highway 27, going from Copiah County over to Crystal Spring and Interstate 55 to Interstate 20 to Vicksburg. We can take and invest dollars in building that highway. It's going to create an evacuation route for individuals coming off the Gulf Coast, similar to the weather that we're having in Florida today, because we have a lot of that on the Gulf Coast for Louisiana. We use that money to invest in that, but it's also going to bring about business. We moved to the Clinton-Byron corridor here in Hinds County. We addressed that issue. It's going to help with all of the traffic jam around the stack and moving traffic in and around Jackson. We invest in Highway 80 and State Street to bring that reconnectivity of Jackson, Mississippi back into the what the interstate system is taken away from. By investing in State Street, 80, 27, and Byron corridor, and some property up around Tougaloo in the way of infrastructure, it's going to change Hinds County. It would change Jackson, Mississippi, and add to the economic development and opportunity for citizens to stay in Jackson, as well as innovating and bringing things into the infrastructure system that need to be done.
All right, we're going to continue our conversation right after this break. And welcome back. We talked earlier about education as a key factor in our economic prospects, but there's also healthcare. Scott Waller, it's not only a key industrial factor here, but it's also a condition that directly impacts the availability of our workforce. Talk a little bit about the importance of healthcare and what impact it has.
Without question, a healthy workforce is vital for us to be able to make sure that we're providing the type of workforce that businesses are going to need. And when we think about how we go about doing that, there are a variety of things that we want to look at. Health and wellness is a big part of what we talk about. You know, MEC is very lucky that over the last 15 years we have been able to go out on the road with our MEC Road Show, our tour that we do. And our sponsor, Blue Cross and Blue Shield, is sponsoring it not because of the marketing side of it, because they want to be able to stress the importance of what it means to have that healthy workforce. And it begins with the preventive care. It begins with being able to address issues early that may keep people from missing time on the job, or address issues so that you can deal with serious illnesses or diseases that one may happen. So as we look at this, the more that we can understand the importance of it and how making sure we have access to health care in a way that our working Mississippians can benefit from that is extremely important to make sure that we're really understanding why it matters. And it matters because it's all about creating the availability of a workforce that matches the skills that we're able to teach them from a workforce training or educational perspective, that gives you a complete sense of ability to come to Mississippi, set up shop, have the workforce available, be here to expand your business, and have the workforce available as we go forward.
Commissioner, you've dealt with plenty of healthcare policy when you were in the Senate. Is our precarious state of health in Mississippi holding us back from greater prosperity?
It is. When you look at our healthcare situation in the state of Mississippi, especially rural, and the availability and access and affordability. We're currently looking at some of our hospitals in the Mississippi Delta, Greenville, Greenwood, Clarksdale, that have been challenged due to finances and other kinds of problems that's being created. To see those hospitals struggling and the threat of the possibility of losing them creates even more severe problems. In addition to that, when you look at the cost, inflation for transportation, to be able to move our citizens to health care and get the services they need, those kind of things are very challenging and very problematic for the state of Mississippi and the workforce, because if you don't have a healthy workforce, it's going to create problems with productivity. It's going to create problems with recruitment. It creates problems in all areas as far as business opportunities and economic development and community growth.
I know when I'm talking to the Lieutenant Governor, I get both of you to answer this. We've often talked about the brain drain of young people leaving our state and going other places. What is it going to take to get the young people and to keep our best and brightest into the state of Mississippi? Scott, I'll begin with you.
Well, first I want to say we have a lot of really bright young professionals in the state of Mississippi. MEC has just started the process of looking at the Mississippi Talent Initiative, is what we're calling this. It's a spinoff of our most recent report of Securing Mississippi's Future that we released back in February of this year. And this report is designed to take a look at what is it that have really, what are the things that young people are staying in the state for? Or what is it that they're coming back to the state if they happen to leave? We've actually been on the road talking with people here in the state, and I can assure you, listening to these folks, they're very, very bright, and we're very lucky to have them. We just need more of them. And I think that's where we want to focus our attention, is how to create the opportunities. And it begins with jobs. It secondly begins with understanding of what's available, making people realize there are great things that are happening here in Mississippi. Because one of the things that I think is really can play to our advantage is the cost of living and the sense of community. Those are the things that we're hearing from these young people that matter to them. So our next step is actually to go to places where people who are from Mississippi have left and where they're working, and talk to them about why they chose there and what might make them come back to Mississippi, and then really take a long-range look of what our job needs are going to be, what our population projections are going to be, and really from an educational standpoint, what we need to be focusing our attention on to make sure we're educating our citizens here in Mississippi for the opportunities that exist here in Mississippi, because there's no greater pipeline to deal with our need for workers than to make sure our citizens here are prepared for those opportunities.
Commissioner, I'd like you to respond to that. And on top of that, when we asked the Lieutenant Governor too about the water crisis and the images it's playing nationwide on the state of Mississippi, how does that impact recruiting people and getting young people to stay or getting young people to come to the state?
Well, let me address the brain drain first of that. Infrastructure is a key component that will assist in reducing and stabilizing some of that brain drain. And I say that because the Department of Transportation, we have some 3,000 plus employees, but the spinoff, what we do with those 3,000 employees creates a number of jobs. And those jobs range from the maintenance individuals that you see standing on the side of the highway with a flag or a stop sign when we are construction, up to engineers and all kinds of various positions that our young folks would be attracted to. So when we talk about infrastructure and we invest dollars, recurring dollars that I spoke of earlier, as well as the federal money that's coming down, and thanks to the legislature, the additional money that they gave us last year with the $100 million for bridge and the $40 million match, $35 million for capacity project. Those are the kinds of investment that we're speaking of. And when you do that, it also creates a spinoff because those road builders, the contractors who build our highways, they're going to look at the long-term investment that we are committed to from the state legislature as well as the federal government, and know that they have an opportunity to rebuild and grow and expand upon their industry. That's job creation. It's created more jobs that we're going to be able to attract our young folks here in the state of Mississippi and keep them here. So when we invest, we are investing in human resources by having those kind of jobs created, but we also bringing about safety because our highways are being safe, and we create the community and economic development for those businesses called Nissan, Toyota, Continental Tire. None of those industries would be in the state of Mississippi if we did not invest in our infrastructure system and if we don't maintain it so that we can make sure that their vehicles are going to be able to get their products in and out, then we will lose those kind of industries. So investing in infrastructure is a small investment on dealing with the brain drain, but also in dealing with other aspects of the infrastructure system because no community is going to be able to deal with it. It doesn't matter whether you're talking about education, with a school or a hospital. None of those things are going to build, individuals are not going to invest in those kinds of make those kind of investment if the infrastructure system is not there to support it.
If you all could choose a single priority for improving our economy, our economic future, what would it be, Scott?
I think it comes back to creating that available workforce that is going to drive job growth, and that's really what will be the biggest factor. But I think part of that, I want to just kind of piggyback off the infrastructure side. Part of that is also technology infrastructure, making sure that we have the ability to take advantage of all the technology that exists today as we build that workforce. And so if we think about it from that point, that's what's going to drive the economy, that's what's going to drive jobs, is a qualified, skilled workforce being available for businesses.
Commissioner Simmons?
You know, I'm going to be biased, and I'm going to say infrastructure, because once again, someone said it a long time ago in a great movie, Mississippian, if you build it, they'll come. If you don't have a good infrastructure system, the best education system in the world is not going to be able to survive and maintain. Now, once again, we need the education system, so I'm not downplaying that at all. So to my great teachers in the past who taught me, and to all of those individuals who are going into the education field, continue to do what you're doing. It's key that we have the education, the technology, but you must have an infrastructure system that support that community and the state of Mississippi.
All right. Commissioner Willie Simmons and Scott Waller with MEC, thanks again for joining us tonight. And we'll be right back. If you missed any part of this special edition of Mississippi Insight, we'll be rebroadcasting it on our regular time slot Sunday morning at 10:30. Join us for every Sunday morning for more of the economic affairs and political coverage that you demand. I'm Byron Brown from all of us here at 12 News. Make it a good night.